Yo, you listen to more about something else. My name is Joshua, and I just want to say thank you once again to anybody and everybody that's been rocking with the show. But anyways, on this episode, I bring a special guest, Best Ideas podcast host, Tyler Shrooms. We talk about social media, we talk about podcasting, we talk about getting things done, actually. But enjoy the show. Please, once again, rate it, review it, share it. You can do one or you can do all three. Either way, I truly appreciate it. Now let's begin the show.
First off, I'm going to have to ask you to go and rate this show. Maybe even leave a comment. And you could do that on iTunes or SoundCloud. And for Android users, you can now listen via Google Play. Now, this podcast may contain explicit content, just saying. So open your mind, relax, and listen to this dope-ass podcast.
Food for thought, coming fresh, I'm the chef. I got greens for your brain, have a taste, it's the best. Food for thought from the flesh, tag along on the quest to find more about something else. Hey, food for thought, coming fresh, I'm the chef. I got greens for your brain, have a taste, it's the best. Food for thought from the flesh, tag along on the quest.
If people don't understand that, well, they don't understand nothing.
Truth spilling, leaving victims to my honest ways. I come in peaks like an alien from outer space. Internet pirates riding waves on your webpage. Download shit, click the link, press play. I don't mean to pray, but I pray every week for myself, for my fam, cause we all gotta eat. Protein, no more sweets. Till I'm caked up on the beach in Belize. Food for thought, coming fresh, I'm the chef. I got greens for your brain, have a taste, it's the best. Food for thought from the flesh, tag along on the quest to find more about something else. Wait, food for thought coming fresh, I'm the chef. I got greens for your brain, have a taste, it's the best. Food for thought from the flesh, tag along on the quest to find more about something else. Wait.
Yo, you listen to more about something else. My name is Joshua, and I just want to say thank you to any and everybody that's been rocking with the show since day one. I truly appreciate it. Yo, if you want to subscribe, review, or share, you can do one or you can do all three. Either way, I appreciate it. But we're here. We're in the middle of August, and things are going really well. But today is a special day. We have a special guest. We're here with Tyler. Say hello to the people.
Howdy, howdy.
How you doing, man?
Doing well.
Good. Tyler has a podcast, The Best Ideas. Really, really fascinating. He also has an app called Tess. Am I correct?
That's right.
Good. So, quickly, not quickly. I actually want you to get into it because I'm actually fascinated. What is the whole idea behind Tess?
So Tess is a podcasting app. You can listen to all your favorite podcasts, but then you can also record your own podcast. We have some other features that make sharing snippets of podcasts possible within the app. So if there's like a part in a podcast that you really like, you can actually clip it down and then share that to someone else on the app, and they can listen to it. And they can also go to the full podcast feed as well. So yeah, I've been working on it for about a year. It's been a real labor of love. We are an official business. It's not just a passion project. And we're in Gainesville, Florida. We're keeping going. We're sticking with it. So
what was the idea behind it? Because there's multiple podcast apps out now. So what could I say is different from the next podcast app or even Apple Podcasts?
Yeah. So it's different because you can record your own podcast is probably the biggest aspect. And then also, clipping and highlighting is what we call it, highlighter feature. And you can share that. You can leave comments, and you can also track some analytics of your favorite podcasters and kind of see the different trends in the background there. There's going to be a lot more features coming out in the future, but right now we have differentiated ourselves enough to where people have started to download it. Mostly from my audience. And what's really cool is we haven't spent a single dime on marketing, and we already have like 200, 300 downloads. So
oh, really?
It's really cool. Yeah.
It's a whole team of you guys, or it's just a few?
Yeah, it's not me. I don't know how to program at all, unfortunately, but I have two guys approached me about like last year, and they were computer scientists at University of Florida, and they were like, yeah, we want to build this app. We want you to be kind of the business end. And what we figured out very quickly was that there really isn't a business end, unfortunately, because podcasting apps are already free in the market. But what we did do is we went ahead and immediately built out our test media team to go ahead and start creating podcasts, because those can be monetized and much better for business. We do have some long-term business models for the app itself, obviously, but it is tough to play ball in an industry where the products are $0 per unit.
So tell me, other than tests, let's go into the Best Ideas podcast. I'm actually really fascinated because I don't actually listen to a lot. Well, I do listen to podcasts, but I'll try to limit it to a certain amount. I listen to a lot of long forums, a lot of Joe Rogan. I'm listening to Clinton and his scandal right now, which is really fascinating. But there's something about yours as far as like bringing people on and just talking and sharing just ideas from an intellectual standpoint. So what was the idea behind it?
Well, I mean, honestly, I've been a deep thinker for my whole life, not by choice, but just, it's what I like to do in my spare time. And ideas are really the most important aspect of society in a lot of ways. Because if you think about it, they're really mysterious, because ideas don't really exist tangibly, right? The idea of capitalism doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
But it has lived longer than any one person has ever lived, right? So the idea, even though it doesn't tangibly exist physically, like you can't go out and touch capitalism, you can't go out and touch love necessarily. Like these ideas, but they play such an integral role to the human experience and to the way that we organize our societies. Even society, it's an idea. It doesn't actually exist. Just a bunch of people hanging around each other and making things work out. But so they're so integral to the human experience and to the way we organize our societies. It's like, clearly there's something going on there. And so what I wanted to do was really isolate the best ideas and the ideas that have been with us for the longest time. And I've been pretty successful with it. It's no project that you set out to do is going to be exactly like what you envisioned it in the beginning. That's what I've learned. And so while each podcast has been different in terms of like the depth of thought and then the breadth of thought, like I have several times, reached the level of philosophical intrigue that I've intended to go out and try and discover. So it's been a success in that way, and I've been able to kind of deepen some relationships with people in my local community and some longtime friends as well.
That's good. So a lot of podcasts, their projectile is going to be at least 4 years, right? Give or take, let's say consistency, because they're all putting out the same content, essentially. So where do you see yourself as far as like, do you see yourself only doing this for 5 years? Do you see yourself doing this for a lifetime or what?
Man, honestly, that's tough. That kind of my life goals and my life vision is something that does not surround around money. But what I would say is that I would definitely be doing this for at least the next 2 years, at least the Best Ideas podcast. And the reason I say that is just because it brings me so much joy and so much order. I have to be disciplined about doing it, which I really like, having something in my life like that. And then also, just the audience that I've cultivated on Twitter and Instagram, that they enjoy what I'm talking about. They really like, and they seem to get a lot out of it. But in terms of like a lifetime, I would like to, but if I feel like I need to go, to Southeast Asia and start a hot dog stand, depends on the extent to which I feel compelled to do that. So, but the thing about podcasting is you can really do it anywhere as long as you get it set up, and can transport all your equipment and stuff.
That's good. So tell me, like, there's one thing that I always like talking about on my podcast, and it's just like getting things done. I really feel like that's really important because it will hold you back if you choose not to. You can say that life is not fair. You can say that the government doesn't like you or the system is made for you to fail. But time in and day out, we see people make it. So, like, what is your perspective on getting things done?
Dude, that's a really good question. That's actually something I was thinking about this morning while I was running, because it was like so difficult to motivate myself to go out and go for a run that I usually go on. And I was like, why do I feel so lazy right now? Like, and I was thinking about, where does that even come from? And laziness kind of is like the opponent, or like the villain of getting things done, in some way. So to answer your question directly, how do I get things done? I make lists, very practical. I use my calendar app. I have a MacBook and an iPhone, so they sync, and that's like a huge blessing to be able to reference this calendar that I have at any time. So use the heck out of your calendar if you have one. And then let's see, other things that I do, the actual emotional aspect of getting things done, man, it's all about like not procrastinating. I guess it's like doing it when you can do it, that not necessarily scheduling it out, although that is extremely important too for things that you're going to do on a regular basis. But like just doing it when you realize you have some free time. Like that's what I kind of learned in college, was that I would have all these assignments and I would schedule when I'm going to do them, and they never got done that way. But that could just be my own personality. The way that I got them done was I would get home from an event or get home from work or something and just realize I have an hour or two, and I would just pound it out then. And that works out for me, but I don't know. I was also doing online classes, so it's different. But but that's a really good question, Joshua, because if you can figure out how to do things consistently and how to, even more importantly, I'd say how to pursue your own ideas. Like if you have an idea to make this awesome burrito and start a restaurant selling that burrito, like it's really tough to get from the just having that idea to actually earning your first dollar by doing that. Like, there's a whole life story in between almost.
And it's crazy because you literally go anywhere and you have to think about it. Like, it's another thing that I want to bring up too is like, motivation. Everybody says that they need motivation to do something. Well, it's just like, yeah, but motivation only lasts so long, because then you're going to need it again tomorrow, then the next day.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, where's the motivation for tomorrow?
Yeah.
Where is it for the next day? And like, it's just a matter of getting it done because that it's going to pan out to be good just for you.
Yeah.
And like, I'm personal training, and I have to constantly tell people like, look, you're not going to see results today. You're not going to see results in a month. But once you get to 2 months, 3 months, look, we talked about losing 20 pounds at the beginning of the session. We're 20 pounds down. We're 30 pounds down. Like, my whole issue about a lot of things that goes on now is that people don't like to look ahead. Like, they just look, and it's all about emotion and, how they feel at the moment. And it's just like, look, I need you to invest in yourself. And that's a big thing because people don't like investing in themselves. They don't understand investing in themselves. One thing that I hold pride in is like taking care of myself. I don't mind drawing myself away from things that I feel like it's not good for me. And I don't know, it's important to try and like just do better, Like, I feel like, everybody loves saying they want to live their best life, but it's just like, how?
Yeah.
How are you going to do that?
Yeah. I think a lot of people think they're living their best lives, but they're very, very far from it.
Far from it.
It's easy to lie to yourself, unfortunately.
Yeah. And, that's just it. And I feel like social media plays its part, but I feel like we've allowed social media to play into our vanity. And I don't know, we're here now. And I don't know. It's weird. But
so
go on.
Let me step into that point a little bit, because one thing that I've noticed with social media, especially in kind of using the example of working out, like what you can achieve by working out and mixing that with social media is this instant pleasure or instant gratification when you've done like maybe 2 reps of some kind of bicep curl, or for the ladies, you've done a couple squats or something, and your body is naturally going to get a little bit swole, a little bit swollen.
You're gonna get that pump.
And so but that's not going to last. But what you can do is take a picture, of that moment in time, and then that's what you can post online. And so what a lot of times people end up doing is just getting the short instant gratification, and it works. That's the problem, is that it works if what you're trying to get out of working out is to impress other people, right? Or to achieve this level of swollenness. And nothing against people who want to get big and get jacked, for sure. But like, the reason I work out, the reason I exercise is to stay motivated, to keep my head and my blood pressure regulated and proactive. And if you go for a run every day, or you're hitting the weights, it's going to be good. You're going to have positive outcomes. No one has had a disciplined workout schedule and regretted it, but it's really easy to get into a rut of just living to impress other people. And I think that's kind of at the root of the worst way that you can end up with social media kind of taking over your life, is that everything you're doing is to some extent being done so that you can project an image to your environment.
Yeah.
And what's most important is that you're convincing yourself that you can go do something, that you're capable, and actually doing the thing itself is usually the most important thing, as long as it's good.
And that's the thing. Validation is probably like the biggest thing, because when you think about it, it's just like, why am I doing this? A lot of people like to fool themselves and say, oh yeah, I'm doing it for me. I don't really believe that at all. If it's not validation from people that we don't know, it's validation from our family members, which is important. Like, you want your parents to like you and stuff, even though like your parents automatically love you. Well, some, but that's it. Like, I don't know. Like, it's weird how we're in this space. Like, we would have never got to this space if social media never jumped off. Like, a part of me thinks about, just in the aspect of the generation before us or the generation before that. And we're always talking about what's going on in our environment right now. And it's like, is a lot of people having babies, or are we just more open to what's going on now? Because to me, I feel like it's always been like this. Like, the generation runs in a cycle, and we're here again. And how we notice what's going on is, this is life. Like, this is what it is to be life. And I feel like social media has given that great exposure, because back in the day, somebody, a man had two families, and you wouldn't find out until he died. But now it's like, you have to have that level of, oh, you have to show off your family and your wife and your woman crush or whatever, or it's not true. If you didn't take a picture, or if it's not online, it didn't happen, pretty much.
Yeah, the pics or it didn't happen mantra.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of social media, and it's something that bothers me, actually. It's just a matter of like, just clickbait, and just a matter of believing everything that you see on the internet, and more specifically to social media, because it seems like we're at a point right now where we don't know what to believe. But it's just like, the people that are writing these articles, because I actually take my time and I read articles. But what do you think is the issue as far as like reading articles and knowing if it's true or knowing if it's not true? Because a lot of these publications, they want to create that shock value, and shock value only lasts so long.
There's a lot there. I mean, so basically you're asking, why have media outlets kind of evolved to incorporate more clickbait headlines than more honest journalism? I mean, well, because the newspapers and cable television are now like defunded. Like, the people who were watching those are shrinking, day by day. The rates of viewership of cable news and people who buy newspapers are gone. The newspapers used to make a lot of money because they were selling a product, and they were selling exclusive information. And as you got closer to the information age, the price of newspapers got higher and higher. But then when the internet dropped on the scene and it was widely proliferated so that people could absorb news in that way, you got loads and loads of people migrating from newspapers to just straight up Twitter or, online news publications. And so you can't make as much money that way online, unfortunately. And you also can't be dominant in the space. So to answer your question, the reason why, you're seeing a decline in the quality of media is simply because, it's a company, it's an industry that is losing money. There's not as much money there in hard copy and traditional style television network. So just like if you were buying like large quantities of like wood for burning, you were buying this from some farmer in your town, and you were buying wood to keep your stove going. But then all of a sudden, someone found a new source of coal, to heat their stove, and this guy who you were buying the product from, the wood, he's going to start having to cut costs. He's going to have to start cutting corners if he wants to survive. But most likely, he's just going to go out of business. So the wood that you were buying is going to be, just by definition, just less quality. It's going to be lower quality because he's having to cut corners to be able to stay in business. Now you see the same thing in the media industries. They're just having to hire like people who are willing to settle for lower and lower amounts of money. And there's actually this concept of like getting compensated through activist capital. So what motivates people to work for less and less money is the fact that you're not getting paid in money, but you're getting paid in like this feeling of that you're doing good for the community. The New York Times is a great example of a publication that has really decreased in quality because they're bringing on journalists who are just willing to settle for less money, but they're not. But what to compensate for that, they feel like they're able to project a more radical view in what is the New York Times. So it's a lot of that. I think also there's companies that are doing it really well, that are doing like BuzzFeed, for example. They exemplify making money in the new news industry, and but it's a lot of clickbait, and so that's the way that they've made money, and all of the money is kind of in the industry of news is kind of going towards places like that. Luckily, there's also great places, more like like Joe Rogan. People are getting their news from like alternative spaces. Some of them good, some of them worse than Fox News and CNN, and some of them better than Fox News and CNN. And unfortunately, we're gonna have a period where through this technological transition, there's going to be really bad outcomes, but there's also going to be in the end, a positive outcome, because that's what humans do. We naturally select for the best outcome. And at one point in time, newspapers were the best outcome, but now that's not the case. But we don't know what the best outcome is. It's likely, I would make the argument, it's podcasts, and specifically TESS is the best news media outlet. But who knows?
Go ahead, get the free promo.
So that's kind of my answer to that. And I'm a lot of those ideas kind of come from an interview on the Dave Rubin Report. So it's called the Rubin Report, when he had on Jordan Peterson and Eric Weinstein.
Yeah, I listened to it. It's really interesting. Really, really interesting.
You listened to that exact interview?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I like Jordan Peterson, to be honest. It really makes me think. Yeah. Say, man, if you really like the show, and I assume that you like it because you're still listening to the show, but if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And if you are subscribed, please, 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 write us a review. It helps people find the show, for one, and it also gives people an idea of what's going on in the show without actually listening. So, it attracts other people, and I'm just asking, if you don't want to, it's cool. If you do, God bless you. Now back to the show. Yeah. Do you feel like we're declining as a human race, as far as like just from what you were saying about trying to figure out and decipher what is good for us and what is not good for us, but the news publication, that what they're feeding us it's not good for us. Essentially, like, we're all on this and we're all distracted from that.
Yeah, it's not, well, it's not good for a democracy because you have
Mm-hmm.
everyone having a say in outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, so the answer to your first question is no. I think that like this technological change is going to be very impactful, but humans are built to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from a utilitarian standpoint, it's not going to work out for the most amount of people, most likely. I think that. Well, this is a very big question. Like essentially, what humans select as the best thing going forward could disproportionately benefit a small group of people, which is historically what ends up happening. Is who owned the newspapers? It wasn't everybody; it was a small group of people in New York and L.A. and Washington, and they are the ones disproportionately benefiting from newspapers being the best way to dispense news in that given time. And so the big question on the floor is like, how much more disproportionate will the proportions of wealth be distributed with this new media? Because now you have, because it was just national. It was like, the Washington Post would dominate the news space in Washington. New York Times, same thing in New York. But now when you have like Twitter and Facebook, and you have Google potentially having a big role in the way that news is distributed, then it becomes much more difficult to like have smaller news organizations, if that makes sense. Now, your original question is it leading to the end of the human race, or is it degenerating the human race? I think in the short term,
as far as like a level of intellect, because not that many people are out here. Like, yeah, I know you see stuff on Twitter. I know you see stuff on Facebook where it's just your question, like, this can't be your mentality. It can't. Like, I refuse to believe it, but time after time, people are showing you their true colors.
Yeah, there's a lot at play there. I would say that this isn't going to be a popular opinion, but I would say as long as we have a two-party system, it honestly will work itself out, because even if half the if a massive amount of the population just in general is really dumb and is being exposed to like false headlines or misleading headlines, it's still going to be okay, because there's only two forces, right? There's those who own capital and there's the labor. If you read any Karl Marx, there's only two real political forces. And so as long as those forces are continuing to go against each other, which luckily at least that's on our side, I think it's going to work itself out, because if you have, let's say you have 50% of conservatives and 50% of progressive, all their intelligence or their level of being informed about important things is diluted by news media, by subpar news media, at least those two forces are going against each other and the negative effects will cancel out. And then you can also assume that above that, there are people who have found refuge in positive news outlets, and through podcasts or through online sources, and they still have a level head about things. As long as we are still self-interested individuals and self-interested groups of people, like, I think things will work themselves out. Now, it's not going to work themselves out for, the lowest group of people. Meanwhile, they're getting deprived of knowing what's going on, the lowest group. And that's really unfortunate. But, what can be done? This force of technological change isn't something that we can stop, because so many people are making money off of it. And it's generally going to lead to it's better. Like, it is better because, not everybody is going to read a newspaper, but everybody now has like this, this little newspaper capabilities, like right there in the palm of their hand, right? You'd have to go to a corner store and pick up a newspaper. But now you can be informed right here. And unfortunately, the news that goes across your screen right now may be complete BS, or it may be really good. It's up to each individual and their experiences, and unfortunately, it has a lot to do with the nutrition and the care and the love that they were given in their early maturation stages. The love that their parents gave them and the prioritization that their parents had for them that really impacts the extent to which you can decipher BS from real good information. So, yeah, that's kind of the way that I think about it. Is as long as we have as long as the two forces of political understanding don't get unbalanced and one conquers the other, like the conservatives conquer progressives or progressives conquer the conservatives, then I think we should be okay. But if you start to see that imbalance, like if conservatives just stand up and like every time a progressive thought is brought into the public arena that it's crushed, that's a problem, or vice versa.
Yeah. Do you think that because we have the ability, like anybody has the ability, like I can go out there and start doing speaking and speeches and stuff, and even though I may not be right, but I'm spreading that that level of intellect, which may not be right. I could be spreading anything and make it seem like it's true. Do you feel like that's a problem? Because that's something that I also see, that when people are going out, they're doing their little rallies and they're speaking, especially when it comes down to like the most simplest form of gun control. Like we're talking about the Parkland shooting, and everybody is expressing their idea, but it's just like, do you feel like too many ideas out there is good for the environment?
Well, there's always going to be the problem of the vocal minority. There's going to be people who are really, really into politics for whatever reason. And there's always going to be a minority of people who are radical, right? But time after time, the radical people in a population are usually people who vocalize their opinions the most. And so the majority are, whether they're hard at work and they're not as interested in politics, they don't actually vocalize what they're saying. And a lot of it has to do with the negative effects of the two-party system, is that you feel represented, and so that you don't need to, play a part in politics. And I would actually have a pretty strong counter argument for that in general. I think that the two-party system is pretty good. But so that's kind of the answer to my question, is like, or your question is like, because you kind of asked, is it a problem that anybody can kind of get on their soapbox and form an audience and like talk and distribute ideas? I'd say no, that's not a problem. That's really good. It's really, really good. But what can become a problem is if those people are not rational and if they don't have good ideas. But I think that by and large, honest people who are coming to politics from a place of honesty and integrity and really wanting to see good change, they're going to have good ideas because they're really thinking it through. They actually see the possibility of their ideas being implemented into policy, and no one's going to bring an idea to the polis or to Congress if they don't actually believe it. Now you'll have a lot of people that bring ideas like lobbyists that aren't their own. They're bringing ideas that are going to disproportionately benefit a few amount of people. But by and large, I think what you're asking is actually the answer to that, lobbyist phenomenon, is that now the average person's voice is actually possible to be heard. And so people like Jordan Peterson, who wouldn't have really gotten the time of day 5 years ago with the state of news in the way it was, now he can start a YouTube channel, hundreds of thousands of people can listen to him, and he's got all these really rich, interesting ideas. Now, maybe 20% of his ideas are wrong, right? But the 80% of the ideas that are right are good, and like they're good for people to hear and consider. Either they're alternatives to existing ideas, or they're just historical truths, or he's observing like something about history that people have forgotten. Just having those ideas on the public psyche, I think, is going to be a lot better to inform the electorate. And that's the vision of news media that I see being productive, is people incorporating really old truths and applying them to today, brushing them off, chiseling them down, and making them ready for 2018.
To add to that is that one thing that I noticed about people is that they say that they're open-minded. but I believe that you're only open-minded to what you agree with. So, do you think that that limits what kind of content goes out there as far as listening to everybody, radical or not, or just listening to people and just siding with what you agree with?
I think it's really difficult to be open-minded. I think if you achieve a level of open-mindedness that is truly like objective thinking, I think that as a human, you're only going to be able to sustain that for so long. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be educated on a issue or a topic in its entirety, or like really continue to pursue new information. I think you can do that open-mindedly, but when you engage in a debate, there's always going to be bias, I think, because, you know, things like people believe in, like gun control, like why you would want people to really care, you know, to lobby for what they believe in, to express themselves in a way that's channeling their belief. You know, just to get and luckily there's more than one person. So the way that's going to balance out, if one person's really passionate about the way that an issue should go, and another person's passionate in the opposite way of the way they think that issue should go, they're going to balance each other out. And that's why we have voting. That's why we have these things, these mechanisms of democracy. But to actually be open-minded, I think, is very, very difficult. Like you have to really prioritize that. That has to be your goal, to be open-minded, you know? It's not to solve the problem of gun control or you know, any issue. It's to actually be open-minded itself. The means are the end in that way. And
do you think that it's hard? Like, I feel like it's harder for people to unlearn, which is what I'm trying to do right now, is unlearn things that I learned when I was younger and try to like adopt a new view. Like everything that I look at, everything that I try to see, everything that I want to even try to partake in thought, I have to look from an objective view. But I feel like it's much more harder than it sounds. But I feel like once you do that, like, it's like your brain just opens up because you take out emotion.
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing to prioritize, you know, like trying to rid yourself of bias, rid yourself of preconceived notions about reality. And then also when you're doing that, you're going to realize that I've actually been exposed to some pretty damn good ideas. Like, you know, someone somewhere, you know, in my history told me that, you know, discipline is something to be prioritized. And that's a good thing. You're going to stumble upon that and be like, wow, like, you know, the fact that I can wake up in the morning and get stuff done, and that I can withhold myself from playing hours and hours of video games to go do something that maybe isn't as pleasurable, but is actually going to bring good into the world. Like that's very, very useful. And so you'll realize, and I'm not saying you specifically, but anybody who's honest with themselves and goes back and tries to consider things that they believe that aren't actually true and that may not actually be useful for them to believe, like the more that you can go back and do that, the better. You know, because you're going to eliminate BS that you believe, but you're also going to refine and refine these jewels of knowledge that you maybe didn't prioritize, that you maybe didn't see as valuable before, but now you can bring to the forefront because they're not as cluttered with these other ideas that were around them.
Yeah, that's one thing that I thought about. You know, one time my friend asked me why do I go to church and stuff, and I really couldn't answer the question. I just kind of went to church because my parents made me go to church. But it was like, it makes a lot of sense to question yourself and question your beliefs, because if you don't, then somebody else that comes in, they're just going to wipe you and obliterate you, especially when it comes to religion. Like, you want to be able to stand strong, and that's where we all talking about. We have to build this foundation of knowledge. But I don't know, people are going to be people, and not people are not going to see what we see, which is unfortunate, but here we are in 2018.
I think another really good practical takeaway in this space of thought is to be aware of the people that you're hanging around with and the influences you have. So we talked about news media, and I won't spend too much time on that, but you know, that's a significant influence on the way that you think, and there can be bias. There's multitudes of biases that get pumped out of Fox News and CNN every day, right? and that serves a purpose. But another influence that you can have in your life is your friends, the people you're hanging out with, who are sitting there reinforcing your ideas, right? That you may say something that's a little bit out there, and someone's like, yeah, you're right. You want to be aware who you're with, and then sometimes you can't control it. Sometimes your group of friends are kind of locked in. Like if you're in the army, you can really only hang out with a group of people, but the more autonomy you can have, the better. So you can choose who your friends are. And I would say that the characteristic that you want to have for your friends is that they have integrity and that they're pursuing knowledge. Whether that's through formal education, usually is the best thing, or if they're just like pursuing, knowledge and reading books, listening to a lot of podcasts, it's a good sign. And they're gonna question you if you bring them some BS. They're gonna be like, they're gonna be like, you're wrong. And this is why, or
It's true. They always say surround yourself with smarter people, or if you want to be successful, more successful people. If you want to be richer people, and keep it that simple. Like that's probably the simplest thing that anybody can say to you. But Tyler, I like to end the show. I always end the show with words of wisdom. So please, if you have any knowledge, can you drop that for us?
Yeah, I would just say that if you show me your friends, I can show you your future, basically, to kind of hark on that last point that we made, And that's something that my youth pastor used to say, and it's something that my mom says quite a bit. It's like, it's basically what I was saying before, and what you just kind of said is like, being around smarter people or people who are on a higher trajectory than you are, And the question is, where can you find those people, and how can you convince them to let you hang around them? Sometimes you can shoot a little too high, like, being around a bunch of philosophy professors is probably the ideal place to be within this conversation, but are you going to really bring any value to them in a way that they're going to also feel compelled to reciprocate value to you? But mostly it's about considering the people who are in your life right now, so I tend to go on more than I should sometimes. I think it's just a result of my youth. But yeah, the words of wisdom I would exalt is show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
That can go a long way. Go ahead and drop any type of promo that you want to drop. Twitter, Facebook, Tess, go on.
Yeah, so right now I'm mostly active on Twitter. So if you follow me at tshroom, at TSHROOM, that's also my Instagram. And I just post little words of wisdom. I post when I've put new podcasts on iTunes and on Tess, and I'll just use it for regular social media. Like the other day, I saw a deer at a restaurant, and it was like letting people feed it. So I posted a bunch of pictures of that. That's mainly it. If you want to download the Tess app and try out a new podcasting application, you can do so at tess.fm. So TESS.fm. And you can download the app there. And also if you just go to your app store, you can find it just by searching Tess, TESS. So, and the logo looks like this. Well, I don't know if this is a visual podcast.
Fair. Got you. But please rate the show, review it. I truly appreciate that. But my name is Joshua, and I'm out.
Cool. Thanks for having me, man. It's definitely a pleasure.